Hi, welcome to episode 9 of Data Mesh TV. Today's show, we're really happy to have Dr. Sebastian Klapdor from Vista. He's leading Vista on a mission to become the most iconic data and analytics company. Sebastian brings a lot of experience, 12 years in McKinsey, I think, before he joined Vista to lead their data teams. And so we're going to talk a little bit about strategy. We're going to talk a lot about data products and domain. And hopefully it's enjoyable. I think it's going to be a really useful conversation with somebody that has a tremendous amount of experience in data and, more importantly, data mesh. Let's jump right into it. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Adrian, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Great. I was doing some reading this morning, and I read a quote that I can't remember where it came from, one of your articles, and you were talking about data and water. And I know I came from oil and gas. And so as a CDO, we used to talk about data being like oil. Data's like oil. Data's the new oil. But I love your quote better, right? It's kind of very Zenish. It's a Bruce Lee-ish, right? You know, Bruce Lee would say, be like water. You have to adapt like water. You have to shape like water. And your quote, data is like water, really resonate. I'm not going to steal your thunder, but let's start with that. I think that's a really powerful way to start the conversation, to think about water and to think about data and to think about data mesh.
Yeah. Hey, and I think I always use it a lot because exactly many people said data is the new oil, and I think it's not. I think it's actually not a great comparison because oil, and you are the expert from the oil industry, right? You tell me, but I think oil is very hard to extract from the ground. You need special equipment. It's very tough and hard to produce and to transfer from A to B. Very costly to store. And after all, it is really toxic, right? If it's spilled somewhere, it's really toxic. And with water, what I try to do at Vista, and the entire team tries to do, really make it way more available and democratize good like water, where it flows by the gallon. It's super easy to move from A to B. It's super easy to process. It's easy to access. And it should be, as I said, a democratized good that everyone can use at Vista to drive better business decisions based on data.
I love it, especially the part that it's good for everybody. Everybody should have access to it. Everybody should be using it. And if you think about data being as free and as accessible and as healthy as water, I think that's exactly the right mindset, right? Stop trying to hold it in. Let's start kind of making it accessible. Which, let's jump right into strategy. You and I have had some really good over at the MIT CDOIQ panel. Thank you for joining me there. We had a really good strategic discussion, and I think it's really valuable for anybody talking about data mesh. There's a lot of the sessions and discussions typically start with kind of the technical lenses or the architectural lenses, which are fantastic and extremely useful. But sometimes we miss the most important lens, which is the strategic lens, the CDO lens, when you're looking at mesh. Because we don't look at mesh necessarily from the perspective of how we're going to connect all the pieces. We're looking at part of it for sure, but we have to kind of consider data mesh more broadly in terms of the value we're creating upward, the capabilities we're delivering for our business. I read, again, I did some homework on you a little bit. And so you've got a lot of, I love your thought leadership. I love what you're doing at Vista. And there's a lot of material out there. And another quote that I kind of stole from you was this idea about your old architecture kind of having a ceiling, right? You talked about this monolithic environment creating a ceiling. And so if I'm trying to design capabilities as a CDO, I'm working within that ceiling. You talked about velocity, right? The central teams really not being able to move quickly because we were limited. We were limited to the teams that were there. And then you also talked about the lack of domain knowledge. Now, not to steal all your thunder there again, but I love those points because I think they resonate with every CDO. We're just trying to build capabilities and we're limited and we're slow and we don't have the right knowledge. How are those the right points? Is that how you approach your initial kind of strategy over at Vista?
Yeah, totally. And I think in the end, what as a chief data officer, what is really important to drive is, and that's really what I learned also at the last 12 years at McKinsey, is you always got to start with the business problem and the impact you want to drive from data, right? And therefore, we have a very much kind of a business-led focus with how we build around data and how we drive data through the company at Vista, versus a technological or architectural paradigm that then follows the business strategy and the impact we can create from data. So we looked at it, and when I started almost 3 years back, we looked at Vista and did a brutal assessment on, hey, what's the state of data at Vista, and how much impact and value are we driving from data? And that was not great, because there were many pain points and many limitations to data. Some of them you mentioned them. We were operating in a really kind of old style monolithic data warehouse environment where there's one central BI engineering team who gave access to the data warehouse and who built and owned and operated that data warehouse for all of Vista. And all of that data was in there, be it kind of the website data, be it manufacturing data, all different domains, but it only could be accessed through that data warehouse team. And they were building tables on top of tables, and the velocity was very slow. It was very smart people already at that time, but just the organizational model was not great to make the data flowing like water at Vista, because everything had to go through that central bottleneck. And as you also mentioned, that team didn't have the domain knowledge, right? Still, everyone was trying to get to the data through that team, but that team had then to go back to the producers to understand what does that data actually mean, and that also led to an even lower velocity, because there's a lot of kind of, again, conversation that and trying to find out the domain knowledge, getting the domain knowledge for the specific question, to again make that data then available to analysts. And I think that was some of the limitations. There were some other ones, but we knew that we needed a completely different approach and a different operating model, how to scale to make data available at Vista, to scale way more impact from that. And that's what the data meant.
That's a problem that I think every business recognizes. I know every consumer recognizes. It's, we used to write down, what are the big problems? We always had the same responses. I can't find my data. When I find it, I can't access it. When I access it, I don't recognize it. I don't know it. And so any project, any analytics exercise, you're going through that loop over and over again, and it's frustrating. The first part is the most frustrating because you don't know where to start. And then you feel like you get the win when you finally find it, and then you realize, I don't have access to it. It's not water, it's oil, or it's something else, right? And then you get access to it and you're like, oh my gosh, I got the wrong location field. Can you fix it? Or is it the right one? I don't know. And so, a lot of frustration there. And certainly when we start thinking about domains and products, that's exactly the type of frustration we're trying to chase and resolve. For companies that are, and I'm going to take advantage of having somebody with such a kind of incredible consulting background. I had 13 years at KPMG. You had a partnership in McKinsey, kind of leading thought leader there. We've been doing together IT transformations for a long time, right? I don't know if you added up our experience, if it's 40 years or something close, I don't know, maybe, but we've, our transformation experience, right? If we think about going back to, I don't know, whether it's security in the 90s or Y2K or Sarbanes-Oxley or outsourcing or SAP implementations and SAP re-implementations, and every one of those they were these huge transformational programs, and we learned from, as an IT function, as a business function, how to do them right, and we also learned how to do them wrong. I think there's a lot that we can gain from those experiences. So when I talk about data mesh and I talk to people about getting started, I bring all those lessons forward and say, let's not do it that way. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of those lessons that we can take from the past when we approach data mesh. And I'll let you start. Maybe there's something you would think that some advice. We need to do this different because it didn't work then.
The biggest advice I already shared, which is start with the business impact. I still remember back at my times being at McKinsey, where I had a client, and they were super proud because they just introduced a data lake, and that was really big thing 10 years ago, and they were super proud. And I said, hey, now Basti, we have this data lake now. This is massive, right? I said, hey, cool, this is amazing. How much do you pay for it? It roundabout, we don't really know, but kind of all the work, getting the data in there, everything, probably we spent around about 8 to 10 million. It was really big investment, but now we have it. It's there, up and running, right? Then I said, hey, cool. Congrats. What are you using it for? Oh, it's actually a good question. So somebody in marketing currently runs a report on it, but we're trying to find more users for it. And but we don't know really where, right? And that kind of, I think that shows again the issue, right? If you started with a very kind of with the technology only focus, right? Then there's also, I think, another issue I've seen. If you start, another anecdote, right? were very similar. Another client in the energy sector, they had a super bright data science team. They built up a team around kind of trying to hire leading data scientists from all over the place. But what happened is they put these super smart and brilliant people into floor 28 of an ivory tower, and they were completely working at the corporate headquarters, trying to do some stuff and working on complex, interesting, also almost like interesting problems, almost from an academic perspective. But again, there was no business impact because they were just so far away from the business problem, and they were not working with the sales organizations on the ground, trying to figure out, hey, how should we do better lead scoring, lead management, and kind of, so there we had great talent, not connected to the business problem. In the first example, we had great technology, not connected to a business use case you want to drive and in the business question you want to solve.
Yeah.
And I think, and then there's a third question actually, where there was a team working closely with a business on a business question. So it was a business and a business team and a data scientist together. So they were building actually a really great data science model for forecasting use case. But then what happened then, once this model was ready and the POC for that model was built, they found out, gosh, now we have that model. We want to now really use it in our business to drive value. But then they found out they didn't have the right team they didn't have the right capabilities to scale it. It would just not scale. So they were lacking data engineering on their team, data engineers on their team. They were also lacking the right environment and the right tools. And there the technology comes into play, right? How to build a scalable model basically in the ML ops sense and kind of really productionize things. So I think the thing I want to say is start with the business problem, and then make sure that the things do come together. You have the right disciplines, the right superpowers on a cross-functional product team to solve that business problem with data. And then you then also have the right architecture and the right organization and the right technology in place to then deliver it. You can go step by step by that in that journey.
It reminds me, I know previous leader Jay I used to work for, and Jay would say, we build IT for business outcomes. You know, we don't celebrate IT outcomes, we celebrate business outcomes. And it really changed the way we started thinking about big IT deployments, because you'd start with, and data mesh, I think, especially in that regard, is you start with the consumer in mind. We're designing domains for the consumer. We're designing data products for the consumer. I caught something there real quick. Your friends call you Basti.
Yeah.
Can I call you Basti?
Of course.
All right. I'm a friend. I'm in the circle now.
Yeah,
awesome.
All
right. Yeah. All right, Basti. So I want to talk about domains as well. Yeah. I was impressed when we last spoke, and you talked about 5 domains that you have. Mm-hmm. That I think you got just over 100 data products across. But I talk with customers frequently, and this happens several times a week, where we're designing a data mesh and we're talking about a large number, 20 plus domains, and that's the starting point. And usually I kind of ravel that back and say, hold on, let's start with one. I want to start with one. Let's make sure that we understand how one functions with one stakeholder, how that's going to operate. And then we'll go to 2. More and more, when I talk to organizations like Vista that are leading in data mesh and data analytics that are successful, I find that you don't have very many domains, right? You're working fine with 5. How did you get to 5? How did that process work out?
Yeah. So domain modeling is always a little bit of an art and science, and there are different ways of how to cut and define domains. And also, I think it's important to see domains as a living and breathing thing. It is nothing that is set in stone forever. And we are actually over the course of the last 3 years, since we created the DNA, the data and analytics team at Vista, we changed our domains. We merged 2 domains. We stopped having one certain domain. So it's a living and breathing thing. Most importantly, also there's no perfect analytical solution how to cut a domain. What approach we took at Vista is that we took a customer-centric approach. So we basically took the customer journey at Vista, and then along the customer journey, split up the journey into the different domains. So there's one domain around traffic and marketing spend optimization, building all of these data products in that space, and really, really being deep and understanding the business problems and the customer problems, frankly, that we want to solve in that early stage of the funnels. Then there is a pricing, promotions, personalization domain. So when customers are interacting with us on our different touch points and channels, what is the right content to show them at the right point in time to really present them with something relevant for them? So that's the pricing, personalization domain. There's a lot of kind of RECO engines, next best action models in there. Then customers hopefully interact with us and they suddenly say, hey, cool, I order something from Vista. There's a manufacturing domain that helps basically on forecasting, on better supply chain optimization, but also on things like predictive maintenance for our printing presses and our big manufacturing operations. Then there's a customer care domain continue to go on the customer journey. So if customers interact with us through various channels, like things like chatbots, like NLP problems, understanding what actually customers are telling us, pattern recognition across our 10 million customer interactions we have every year, because it's just impossible literally to go through each of them and learn from them individually. But we kind of have now data products in place that automatically analyze them and come up with themes, recognitions, patterns, say, hey, we should change that product because a lot of customers suddenly inquire about a certain product. And there might be a quality issue, there might be an issue on our website, how you design and configure that product. And then last but not least, there's one underlying domain, which really is about underlying customer facts, LTV models, decile, customer cohort analysis, all of these kind of things, they are in that underlying data domain. So that's how we split it along the customer journey. There are many other ways how to split it, but that's the way that worked for us at Vista.
I love it. I want to underscore something because it's enlightening, right? So when just listening to you talk about domains, it sounds like you're talking about a business supply chain or business processes. It wasn't a technical domain, it was a business domain. And when you describe each domain, you describe each domain in terms of the business purpose that they were serving. That's what we're trying to get to. I want to test a couple other things because it's nice to kind of, hear from someone that where it's actually working, where we're, obviously, and I'm sure you had your own journey and your own challenges along the way. But when we talk about domains, one of the things that we strive for is this idea of autonomous domains, the idea of having these teams work autonomously, driving at their own velocity, with an unlimited ceiling, so to speak. The ceiling is basically whatever they want it to be. How have you guys? I mean, do your domains work today? Are they truly working autonomously? Is that the way they function?
That's exactly how we set them up, right? Just think back about that initial problem statement. We had that one central monolithic bottleneck. Everything had to go through that central BI warehouse team. So we wanted to break that up and say, if we have domains, we have as many, and in these domains, basically the domain is just a logical grouping of the most important unit of value creation in the data space, which is a data product team. And these cross-functional data product teams, we wanted to have as many of these cross-functional data product teams working on parallel to make data available to solve business problems as there are valuable business problems to solve. So whenever there's a new business problem to solve, where there is a value pool behind it, and I'm happy to talk about it in a second, we want to just spin up a team, right? Hey, there's a product manager, data product manager, a data engineer, a data scientist if needed, a data analyst, that start understanding that business problem and building a solution, building a product that solves that problem with data and analytics. And we wanted to, again, have as many teams as we have business problems that are valuable and worth solving for. Now, in order to steer that, we group them into logical domains, and each of these domains, and this is actually where it starts in these domains, they do have value pools. And that value pool is kind of that long-term perspective. It's a monetary value for each of these domains where we say, hey, if we were to do everything, picking again that marketing domain, that first one in our customer journey, if we do everything top-notch, leading edge with regards to data and analytics in how we acquire customers and how we measure our marketing spend, in how we personalize messages out there on different acquisition channels. If you do everything top notch and leading edge, we will drive, and I make that value up, I'm not sharing it here due to confidentiality, we're going to drive 150 million incremental annual recurring profit for Vista by doing that. And so in that logic, each of these domains has a value pool. Same in the manufacturing space. Yeah, based on the baseline we have, the forecast we have. Hey, if we get to a fully data-driven supply chain, to a fully data-driven forecast on how we run manufacturing, a predictive maintenance that reduces downtime in these domains, there's a value pool of X, and that value pool adds up by individual components in each of the domains, and then we staff teams against these value pools. When there's a new value pool, when it's worth, hey, cool, let's tackle that. There's another 50 million value pool we identified. Let's ramp up a team, spin up a team, and they can then independently or autonomously work on the mesh to access the data, build full stack, solve that problem, data analytics from the data tables that are needed, from the data contracts they need to make with other data producers, up to over the models that sit in the middle of the data product. Might be an ML model, AI, might be also something just like a clean data table, yeah, up to a visualization they might need. Even at some point in time, or for some data products, interactive user interfaces where you can, as a user, interact with. We can do simulations. We just build something in the media mix modeling space where you can say, hey, if I shift 10% more of my spend to TV advertising, how would that affect the overall return on invest for my media or for our media investments? So things like that. So they own that business problem end to end and can build a product on the mesh to solve that.
Man, I'd love to see it. I was like, all right, here it comes. And then you said, but it's confidential. I was like, because there's something special there about being able to map a value pool to the domain and then underscoring it or giving more granular with the individual data products. These data products drive these value points. These value points are collected within this domain, this broad domains that drive this broader value pool. That's what we all should be doing. That's the way to think about this. If you can't tie your domain to value, business value, whether it's a dollar sign or whether it's growth or whatever it is, new markets for your business, then you sit back and say, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And if you can, now all of a sudden you're focusing your efforts, you're prioritizing your investments in the right places to drive the right value pool, so to speak. So yeah, I see a new ebook or a new article coming out on domain value pools. But that's, we talk so much about data products, and that's where I want to go to next. Mm-hmm. You got me thinking now. We don't talk enough about domains. I do have one customer who's on me. He's like, Adrian, domain management. And yeah, they're right. Actually, I got to go back to her and say, yeah, you were right. We need to kind of start thinking more about how we use domains, not just as a data logical construct, but more so as a business function. Yeah. Beautiful.
Important about that is also measuring the impact, right? Not only having that value pool identified, but then the moment you start building a data product, and that data product, we have defined actually different life cycle stages of data product with us, and the requirements in terms of measuring the impact, but also the engineering excellence requirements for these data products, they get stricter with each and every level. They move up in the maturity, basically. So it starts with a POC, and we want to drive as many as POCs and as possible to allow innovation, right? And testing out these value pools. Is there really a value pool? Yeah. So let me just take a data scientist, and just the data scientist then can work on our data mesh, because we do have a rule on the data mesh which sees that all data needs to be in an investigatable format. There's no SLA yet to it. The SLAs come into place in data contracts once we build a product that drives value, and we need to have the data in a certain kind of quality available to be consumed by the product. At the beginning, most of the data is in an investigatable. It needs to be investigatable, so that data scientists can go there on the mesh, shop around from a different domain super easily, and pull the data together and build the first POC, and then test that, test whether there is value in it, and we can solve the business question with a model and with data. And then once that is proven, it moves to the next stage, which we call an MLP, a minimum lovable product, not a viable product. In my time at McKinsey, I've seen so many clients being stuck with so many viable products, and they had to use them all the time. Just every day operating with something viable is not amazing. So we try to make it lovable, at least in the first place. And then if we have that minimum level product, that already has higher requirements, again, with regards to the stability of the product, a lot of these abilities or abilities, reliability, stability, and so on and so forth. And then it moves up further the ladder to stable, scaled product at some point in time. And now coming back to the impact, once that product is then moving from POC, that's, for example, a big step from a POC to a MLP. We invest also more into it, but we then also start very systematically tracking the impact. And we do have a framework how to do that is aligned with finance. And how to track impact from these data products we are building across these domains to then show, hey, from that high level value pool which is there, we are actually actively, from that 150 million, we are actively working. We have deployed teams that work against 50 million of these 150 million to build data products actively. And out of these 50 million, look at that. This year, we already have 25 million in the bank cash on the P&L sitting. So, and that's kind of the logic how we track that impact.
I'm going to run out of time here, but I want to dig further in this because there's some gold there, right? There's a lot of value here, and let me pick two areas that we can dig into. One is maturity, and then the other one is the different types of products, because that's super important. So this is my opinion, to see if you agree, or maybe you might challenge me. When I look at organizations that are just starting their first data mesh, I know that we all think about what a data product should be, the perfect data product, how it should operate, what it should do. I tell organizations, in your journey, to me, and you said it a second ago, the greatest value for data products for a lot of companies right now is ideation and discovery. That's the $1 million value right now, is just giving your teams the ability to ideate rapidly, to discover new data sets, to aggregate new data sets and tear them apart and build them again and tear them apart. That's the value for you right now. And that's the biggest value. So if you try to focus too much right now on over governing data products and all that stuff, you're going to actually dilute that value. So right now, be loose, be like water. Let people go out there and discover. Let people go out there and build new data products. 2 or 3 are the same. I don't care. They're not. I mean, at least in Starburst, they're not going to cost you any more money. You're not storing that data anywhere. And so I love that concept. Now, as you mature, and you get to a point where you've got more data products and you're starting to get a feel organically for how people are using them, what people are doing with them, then you can start to optimize. Then you can start to kind of move your maturity curve up, so to speak, and say, well, now I'm searching new benefits. Now my next benefit is reuse, or my next benefit is sharing. But early on, I think ideation and discovery that's the biggest value. You don't want to run through that too quickly because there's money there for you. What would you say to that?
Yeah. So yes and no. So I think there are some parts of, so yes. What kind of, you want to have teams that constantly think about ideas and innovating and having that in a very federated and democratized way, how to drive more, again, value from data, right? If there's a business problem, somebody should be able to kind of get the data super fast and see, do we have the data actually available at all? If not, how can we get it? Hey, let's try to build the first POC, right? A proof of concept to invest whether we can solve that business problem with data analytics. And I think I think one thing that we learned on the mesh is, there is I think you need to communicate to some point in time. Communication is really important, that you don't reinvent the same thing 5 times, right? Because you're still in the end in a resource scarce environment. As you all know, there's always a shortage of data engineers and scientists and analysts in the company. So it is at Vista, despite we've grown our team by over 250 people in the last 1.5-2 years. So we hired a lot, but still there's so many value pools we can tackle. There's a shortage. So you want to make sure that you don't put this many people on the same problem, right? So you need, and just to drive a higher ROI from that. So in short, communicate. That's super important. And then once you've started, hey, there is actually a value, right? We want to really start to tackle that. You need to do it in a professional way, right? Because some of our data products are becoming part of transactional systems. They are accessed via APIs. So we offer them as microservices, and they are called, the moment a customer is on our website, interacting with Vista. So that data product is better up and running and has a high availability, and kind of that quality of services there. So, but there are other data products, they are less mission critical, right? For more, for example, analytics use cases.
That's exactly right. I remember, unfortunately, we're gonna have to go a little bit long, but I think that's a key message, right? So I used to manage, I had 10,000 applications, right? And I didn't manage them all the same way. No, I mean, you have some applications with high reliability requirements or high confidentiality requirements. So you would create attributes to define an application, and based on those attributes, that's how you would manage it. That's how you would operate it and support it and ultimately pay for it. Data products are the same thing. I think you've got some data products that again, their ideation, discovery, you want to leave them loose, go. And then you have data products that maybe they're tied to a financial process, or maybe they're tied to some other, they need to be tied to a formal SLA. They have to work a certain way. Whenever you make a change, you have to have a sign-off process. Yeah, I think there's room, just like we have in the application space, there's room to think about different attributes for data products to make sure that you're managing each with the right way. Same thing you would think about domains. We didn't get into it. I would have, maybe on the next call we do, I would love to learn more about how we manage domains differently, because that governance model to apply to domains is similar to the governance model you would apply to data products. But man, there's so much to talk about. I thank you so much, my buddy Basti, for joining us today. A lot of great content. I'm going to go back and review it again, because sometimes you're talking and you're like, oh, that's good. And you have to go back and rewind that. I hope our audience enjoys it. I know they will. Thank you so much.
Same here. Yeah, thanks for having me, Adrian. It's amazing. Hey, and also for everyone wanting to learn more about the Vista journey, go to vista.io. We do actually write a lot about what we do on the data and analytics space and building these data products on the mesh. There are, I think, over 30 articles out on our blog. So feel free to go to the blog, also connect directly to me. I'm always super interested to learn from other practitioners how to scale the impact from data and how to do that using a data mesh and build data products. So feel free to reach out and connect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adrian.
So Vista is on a journey to become the most iconic data analytics company. And with Basti at the lead, I know they're going to get there, and it's going to be exciting to watch him get there. We can all learn from his experiences. So just a couple of summary points from today's session. One is we started with a conversation on data strategy, focused on business strategy, right? The key message there is focus on the business outcomes. Love the message, right way to approach a data mesh. Second piece, and I know we didn't I didn't use the quote, but it's something that I've heard Basti say before, is the idea of designing customer obsessed data products. When we talked quite a bit about data products and the different types of data products and how data products are used, but at the end of the day, and you will remember this quote, a minimal lovable data product, not a minimum viable data product, but a minimum lovable data product, right? So make sure your data products are lovable, right? You want to make sure people are actually using them, not just viable, but lovable. Love that approach. And then my favorite one, data is like water, right? We want to make sure that data is accessible, easy to access, easy to transport. It's good for you. Everybody should have access to it. Just a really, really strong way to think for any organization who is looking to transform the way they think about data, looking to drive a new data culture. Data is like water is a great motto to approach it. Thank you so much for your time today. Hope you enjoyed the show. I know you will. Talk to you soon.